Hi. Yesterday I was browsing some articles while I was on my break at work, and I came across this article on the website Clean Eating Kitchen. And it was one of those things where they show you a screen and then it flips to another screen after a few seconds and another. And I forgot the title of it for the actual thing. Hold on here, I can get back to that. Problems with plant-based diet. And that leads to the full article that's 8 vegan diet dangers and how to avoid them. So when I looked at just the I guess they call it a web story. When I looked at just the web story, I was immediately like, uh-oh, is there something I missed? Because I've been researching this for months now, and I've confirmed with doctors about this. And so I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of the facts. But this one said that plant-based diets and vegan diets are all the rage. First thing you need to understand is that any diet, if you're continuing to use, something just flew in my face. And if you're continuing to eat processed foods, especially junk food, fast food, and other heavily processed foods, it could be a sandwich from the grocery store. But if you've got if you look at the list of ingredients and you see a list this long, that's heavily processed, and some of that stuff is actually designed to be addictive. So, processed foods are bad. It doesn't matter what diet you're on. You don't want to have processed foods. You want to avoid them. But if you are a vegan or a vegetarian and you're eating lots of processed foods, you're not going to be healthy. You may be protecting the animals that you're concerned about. You may be helping the environment, but you're not helping your own personal health situation. So the first claim that they make in this article on Clean Eating Kitchen in the web stories is that leaky gut is caused by legumes. No, that's just absolute rubbish. Leaky gut is caused by different kinds of diseases. There is no scientific support for this claim that leaky gut can be caused by legumes. Legumes are very good for you, and they're a good source of protein. And in addition, protein from plants is the original source of protein. Protein doesn't come from animals. We ingest it, and then when we are eaten, or a cow is eaten, or a pig or whatever, the protein that's locked into the meat is absorbed by the predator, by the carnivore or the omnivore that's eating that meat. But we can get protein directly from the source, which is plants. So it really makes absolutely no sense to claim that, because if that were the case, I think that there would be medical information, research that would definitely point out that this is a fact, and there is not any. The next one is hormone disruptions. It claims that soy is commonly found in a vegan diet, which can cause hormone interference due to phytoestrogens. Now, I came across this blatant lie a few years ago when I heard something from my sister about certain forms of soy being okay for you and other forms of soy not being okay for you, and I was like, that doesn't sound right. So I did research. Now, when I research stuff like this, I look at credible sources like doctors and scientists and research papers and experiments and stuff like that. And what I learned is that phytoestrogens can fit into the same receptor that estrogen can fit into, but it doesn't feminize us. It has a different protective effect on our bodies. So there's nothing wrong with phytoestrogens. They're good for us. So the next one that's on this list here is risk of anemia. While plant foods contain a form of iron, it is called non-heme iron and is much less absorbable by the body. No, it's called ferritin, and it is much more absorbable by the body. And your body actually wants to store iron in the form of ferritin, because iron in the form of ferritin can be stored in your cells and used as needed. Whereas iron or heme iron from animals cannot, and it causes inflammation. So it's this claim is the opposite of the truth, because the ferrous iron that's in animals, or the heme iron that's in animals, has been linked repeatedly in studies to inflammation and more difficulty in absorbing it. So if you want iron, you need to eat plants to get iron that you can not only use, but you can store. The next one on the list is the vitamin B12 deficiency myth. I've been hearing about this all my life, and I only just discovered the truth is that as protein is made by plants, not by animals, B12 is made by bacteria, not plants or animals. So B12 is naturally found in anything that comes into contact with the bacteria that have the B12. And of course, animals will eat like grass roots and stuff like that, and as a consequence, they'll have B12 within them. However, because of the massive destruction we have been perpetrating for 100 plus years with pesticides and herbicides and fungicides and all these other chemicals on the soil, we have actually decimated to a large degree, not completely, the bacteria that actually produce B12. And although the meat industry does not like to admit this, the meat industry has to often give their livestock B12 supplements, usually in the form of a liquid injection. And you can just search for livestock B12 supplements. It's out there. It's easy to find if you just take the time to look. And we humans can get it, and it's extremely cheap. And you only need a small amount. You can get one pill. You can take that once a week. You can take a pill with a less amount of B12, and you can take that every day. But it's extremely inexpensive. The best forms are crystalline and liquid, and even under the tongue. The next lie that this article tried to promote is actually in the full article itself. So let me go back to the full article. So the full article is pretty sneaky because it starts out saying some good things about about a vegan diet. So it says a whole foods plant-based diet is more often the term used for an approach that includes fewer processed foods and a greater emphasis on fruits, vegetables, legumes, grains, nuts, and seeds. However, even that term can get confusing, as paleo diets are considered to be a plant-based approach, but they do include animal products. And as I pointed out already, a vegan diet doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy if you're eating processed foods and other crap. And then they say, they point out that the popularity of fake meats, which are incredibly processed and not necessarily healthy, and I definitely agree with that. And it says the healthiest vegan diet is likely a plant-based diet that also is one of the best diets for climate change. So they admit, if we stop eating animals, we're helping the environment. And climate change is only one part of it. If you watch the documentary Milked, the milk industry is destroying the ecology of New Zealand. Or if you watch any of a number of other documentaries that show you the relationship between livestock raising and damage to the environment through land use, through incorrect or illegal disposal of the untreated or sewage, the manure. They have holding ponds for pig urine and that stuff. Sometimes the walls break down because they're usually just dirt walls, and it can seep into the water supply and cause lots of diseases that way. And the list just goes on, including unexpected things that happen in the ocean where you have dead zones because of runoff from the farmland that's producing all these animals that we insist on eating all the time. So it's really a massive and wide variety of effects. So the first one, again, they talk about the leaky gut nonsense, and then they talk about the soy protein causing hormone disruptions and higher heavy metal intake. I've never heard of that. Now, if I think that they just are trying to find every myth and putting it all in one article. And then the next one is the heme iron lie, and then the next one, oh, they talk about the increased risk of depression with low omega-3 fatty acid intake. Huh, that's weird. They're claiming that you can only get, apparently, fatty acids, the omega-3 and 6, from, 3 from fish and fish oils, and omega-6 from nuts. But, if you actually take the time to look for information about this, you can get omega-3s from oats and that have been enriched. From blueberries, avocados, nori. Nori is sheets of seaweed, squash, enriched cereals, chia seeds, walnuts, black beans, edamame, rice, tempeh, and other things. So there's no shortage of omega-3 in the plant kingdom. Now, in terms of omega-6, there's also no shortage because, like it mentioned, there are nuts, but you can also get it from other ones. So again, omega-3s, there's a flaxseed, walnut, hemp seed, kiwi, chia, kale, sesame, tahini, edamame, tofu, avocado, wheat germ, and for omega-6, I just found a really long list. So on the high end of the scale, there's grapeseed oil, corn oil, walnuts and walnut oil, cottonseed, soybean oil, sesame oil, pepitas, margarine, pecans, peanut butter, pistachios. Those are the ones that are high and very high. Very high and extremely high. And then in the next category downward, like 10 to 20%, you're looking at almonds, canola oil, flaxseed oil, cashews. And then if you want to go to 5 to 10%, you're looking at olive oil and avocados, olives, popcorn, and oats. And then there are even more that have a low or very low amount. And the ironic thing about it is if you look at this list in the categories of extremely high, which is over 50%, and very high, 20 to 50%, there are no animal products. It's all plant-based. It's only when you get to the 10 to 20% that you see chicken fat and duck fat and bacon grease and lard. Oh, yum. I'm just going to rush right out and eat all those. No thanks. So, it's a bit of rubbish, really, as the British would say. So, you can't run out of omega-3s and omega-6s if you're eating a balanced plant-based or vegan diet. If you're just obsessing over certain things, like you would see some people doing, they just don't know how to stop themselves, and they're just constantly eating French fries and hamburgers every day. Well, then you're going to have problems. Sorry, Rainier cherries. They're good. Okay, so, and by the way, if you're trying to figure out omega-3s and omega-6s, it's recommended that you get 2 to 5 times more omega-6s than omega-3s, but there are some things in our diet that naturally result in us getting too much of the omega-6. So, for example, corn and corn oil, they're very, very present in the food supply, as is soybean oil. And so I personally recommend avoiding corn oil and soybean oil, just because although they have benefits in them, there's these two grains, not grains, the corn is a grain, but soy is a legume. These two items are so omnipresent in the American diet and in some other countries in a wide variety of products where you wouldn't even expect it to exist, that we should probably not use those kinds of oils. All right, so next on their list of nonsense is the risk of vitamin B12 deficiency. And as I explained, vitamin B12 comes from bacteria. And they do recommend making sure that you get it. You can, even if you are on a meat diet or an omnivorous diet, you can still end up with vitamin B12 deficiency if you're not eating the right things. Now, it does mention also here, let's see, inhibition of zinc absorption on vegan and vegetarian. Oh my God, what a bunch of nonsense. Yes, zinc is important for you to eat, but to claim that zinc is going to be inhibited, the absorption of zinc, that is going to be inhibited, uh, as a fact, this is a theory that some people have, but it's not a fact. It isn't supported by science. Then the next one is risk of consuming too much carbohydrate. Well, here's the thing. You shouldn't eat a lot of fat. You should eat an adequate amount of protein, and that is, and then you should be getting a large amount of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates in the form of glucose are what the major form of fuel for your brain. Number one. Also, yes, I would agree that you don't want to eat too much carbohydrates, but it does depend on your situation. It depends on how you're getting your carbohydrates. Certainly, if you're eating simple sugar and syrups and honey and starches and stuff like that, that's not good, because that's going to cause a blood sugar spike. And over time, it's going to lead to diabetes and stuff like that. But if you're doing stuff that's slow release, so you don't get a spike, you can get a low peak over time. That's a completely different story. So lumping all carbohydrates together, and there are really three categories. There's the simple sugars, so to speak, like table sugar and honey and agave syrup and pancake syrup and all that stuff. And then there's the somewhat processed foods like pasta, for example. And then there are the unprocessed carbohydrates, which would include like carrots and potatoes and certain legumes and anything else that has a lot of starch in it. Those ones, the unprocessed ones and the partially processed ones, are relatively safe. Although if you you don't want to eat too much of it, you want to focus more on leafy greens and other things as well. Certainly want to be careful about how much carbs you get, but you don't have to do the kind of keto diet, because keto diet was designed to treat epileptic seizures, not for weight loss. And long-term studies have demonstrated that keto diets over long-term are not actually going to be good for you if you continue them. And then there's risk of disordered eating. Okay, so they're trying to show a relationship between being a vegan or a plant-based eater and dysfunctional eating. And that's just nonsense. Dysfunctional eating comes from here, not from what you put in your tummy. So to try and show this, it's just orthorexia or whatever food disorder that you can think of that is a result of you choosing to eat inappropriately. It's your choice. You may be a food addict, or you may just be making poor choices, or whatever it is, but that is not because you are an omnivore or a carnivore or a vegan. It's because you're making bad choices for whatever reason. So this is just such a stupid article. And I'm going to switch to a second article that I found that's a little bit less ridiculous. It's on BioTrust blog. It's called "What is Wrong with a Plant-Based Diet?" Surprising. And so it actually goes on to say that it's actually pretty good for you. However, although it points out some advantages, it then goes on to point out disadvantages. So it's the first thing on the list is fatty acids, such as EPA and DHA, and it points at salmons and sardines. Yes, you can get fatty acids from salmon and sardine. You can also get mercury, DDT, and PCB from salmon and sardines and tuna and stuff like that. So, pick your poison, but you don't have to, as I already pointed out, you don't have to go to animals to get EPA and DHA. Then it also mentions vitamin B12, which I already mentioned. And it also mentions vitamin D, which, if you're getting sunlight in the morning hours and in the evening hours, not in the middle of the day, because you're increasing your risk greatly for skin cancer. But in the early and late hours of the day, if you spend some time out in the sun every day, maybe 15, 30 minutes a day, during those hours when the sunlight is not strong, your body will produce all the vitamin D that you actually need. Now, here's the thing though. If you're not getting enough, and you want to get more, aside from animals, there are other sources like soy milk and let's see, no, that would be a different one. It's also in vegetables, like mushrooms, and fruits like orange juice, and it can be found in almond milk and rice milk. Now, I'm not a big fan of almond milk and rice milk in general, but there are some that are not bad tasting, like Blue Diamond almond milk is pretty tasty. So that's a bunch of hogwash. And then we go to the next thing they claim, oh, they suggest you're going to have to supplement your calcium. Oh, come on, really? You have to supplement your calcium? I don't think so. So what are some sources of calcium, you ask? Broccoli, beans, cauliflower, green peas, Brazil nuts. I don't like Brazil nuts, but you can eat them. Sesame seeds, figs, almonds, oranges, molasses, and more. Those all will give you calcium. So to say that you can't get calcium from a plant-based diet is just stupid unless you have not educated yourself on how to have a healthful plant-based diet. And then they mentioned that, oh, you need to have animals to get your iodine. No, you don't. You can get iodine from, say, cranberries, potatoes, navy beans, strawberries, corn, prunes, bananas, green beans, kelp, dulse, alaria. Please don't ask me what dulse and alaria are. Look them up. And laver or nori, which is sheets of seaweed. Those all provide it. And this information is so easy to find. It just took me like half a minute to find each of these. And then it also makes a claim about the leaky gut thing. Oh, I'm just going to go back to that for a second. It's caused by things like chronic inflammatory states, which will be caused by meat products because of the heme iron, because of the choline, and other things in the meat that are damaging to your body, such IBD, celiac disease, HIV can cause it, and there are other things that can also cause that problem, toxins, improperly digested food, certain kinds of bacteria, and the list goes on. But to claim that you're going to get leaky gut from eating legumes is just absolutely stupid. I mean, it's beyond belief. If you are concerned about your health and you feel like, I don't really know whether I'm in good health or poor health, you can always go to your doctor and say, I really need to know. Can you do some lab tests, draw some blood and have a look at that and do a calcification scan if you have a concern about plaque in the arteries around your heart, or especially if you have a family history of that problem, or you have diabetes, or you have hypertension. You can look at all these things and find out, and then you have to find a dietitian or some kind of an expert who can help you to understand. Now, be careful. Some of these people don't actually know what they're doing, but and a lot of doctors are not trained in nutrition. I happen to be very fortunate that my doctor actually went back to university and studied nutrition, but the average doctor gets very, very little training in university, and that puts you as the patient at risk, because like when I went to my cardiologist, I asked, well, what should I eat? Because I have plaque run in my arteries or in my heart. And he said, well, Mediterranean diet. I said, can you give me more details? He said, no, I can't, because I don't know anything about nutrition. He's a specialist. He's got his degree in medicine, and then he's got a degree in cardiology, and he can't tell me about something that's often caused by food. Any details. And that's the sad truth of it. So, I just wanted to share those two articles with you and make you aware that there are a lot of people out there that either don't have the right information, or they're trusting bad sources, or they're deliberately spreading bad information because they're being paid, for example, by the companies that are going to be hurt most if we stop eating so much meat. So, I guess, you can look at it this way. If you change your diet and stop eating animals, or at least reduce your amount, you're helping yourself in terms of your physical and mental health. You're helping the animals, because I tell you, I've seen horrible things that are done to animals in ranches that they don't want the public to know about. It's just absolutely revolting, and it makes me cry. Not because I'm a weeping willow or something like that, but just because, okay, I'll tell you one story. In pig farms, when they have the baby piglets, once the piglets are old enough, they grab the females and they're going to raise them up to create more pigs. But the males, they will take them and also with the females, they will take a snipper and they'll snip off the tail without any anesthetic. So the pig squeals and squeals and squeals because it's very, very painful, if you can imagine having a finger cut off, for example. And then some of them die because they get infected because they don't bother to treat the tail to make sure it doesn't get infected. And then, if it's a male piglet, they'll take them, hold them upside down, and take a razor and cut open the scrotum. You know, the ball sack. You know, that place. You know. And then they will squeeze the scrotum, and the piglet, the poor thing, is screaming the whole time, and they'll literally squeeze them out and rip them out of the piglet. And it's just, that one made me cry because, I mean, not just because I'm a guy, but because that is just so horribly painful. And many piglets die because of infections from that, because they're not given anesthetic and they're not given antibiotics to treat infection afterwards. There are in some farms, not all, but in some farms, they're just left to die if they get infected. And it's just, ugh. And the third thing that you're doing when you reduce or eliminate animal foods from your diet is you're helping the environment. And it's so hard to explain just how widespread and how damaging. You can try to find information about North Carolina, which is the hog center of America, and the effects it has on nearby communities. You can look at what happens when you spray untreated manure, just like sewage, onto a farm, and that leads to things like E. coli and listeria and other bacterial buildup in the food that is being grown. You can look at what happens when that raw manure seeps into the water table and how it contaminates wells. You can look at what happens with the runoff if it gets out into the ocean. It destroys the ecosystem near the shore, wherever that effluent is going out. And the amount of methane produced by the livestock industry is massive. It's much more potent in terms of climate change than carbon dioxide. In addition, there's also carbon dioxide production, so we're getting both. And ultimately, the impact of the agricultural industry is worse than the transportation sector. So, and the list just goes on and on and on. Anyways, I hope this has given you some information and helped you to understand. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.